Sandra Bullock is more than just a star. She's living proof of what it means to rise, fall, and rise again. Audiences first met her as Annie Porter, the fierce woman fighting for every breath on a speeding bus, and as Lee Ann Twohy, the unstoppable force who opened her heart and home to a boy in need. More than an actress, she is a devoted mother, a producer who shaped her own destiny, and a woman whose strength carried her through betrayal, heartbreak, and nights of fear. Her smile once lit up red carpets across the globe. Her presence filled screens with warmth and grace, and her name became a symbol of resilience. For over 3 decades, Sandra Bullock has turned private pain into unforgettable art. Today, at 61, her story is more than a career. It's a symphony of survival. Sandra's journey began on July 26, 1964. In Arlington, Virginia, born to Helga Meyer, a German opera singer, and John Bullock, an American vocal coach and soldier. From childhood, her world was marked by discipline and expectation. She spent her early years backstage in Europe, surrounded by costumes and music, living out of suitcases as her family moved from city to city. By age 5, she was performing in children's choirs, and by 10, she had lived in more places than most classmates would see in a lifetime. When the family returned to the U.S. in 1976, she was ridiculed for her accent and clothes, mocked in hallways, and left standing alone on the margins. Those years of isolation carved empathy deep into her soul, teaching her to see the forgotten faces no one else noticed. The pain became her compass, shaping the humanity she later poured into every role. After leaving East Carolina University just shy of graduating, Sandra moved to New York with nothing but determination. She waited tables, tended bars, and trudged home to a freezing apartment with blistered feet, surviving on instant noodles and sheer willpower. Hollywood didn't notice her at first. Early films came and went without a ripple, but she refused to quit. Every no became fuel. And then, in 1993, Demolition Man placed her in the frame beside Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes. The next year, Speed exploded at the box office, turning Sandra into a household name. Suddenly, the girl who once hid her voice commanded the screen with raw authenticity, and audiences fell in love. She followed with While You Were Sleeping, proving she could conquer both action and comedy with ease. But Sandra was never content to simply be Hollywood's sweetheart. She built her own production company, Fortis Films, producing hits like Hope Floats, Miss Congeniality, and 2 Weeks' Notice, and even producing the sitcom George Lopez. Not every risk paid off. Speed 2 was a critical flop. But Sandra turned even failure into fuel. In 2010, she stood on the Academy Awards stage holding an Oscar for The Blind Side, the crown jewel of her career. Yet, just days later, her marriage to Jesse James collapsed in a public scandal that forced her private heartbreak into the headlines. In the midst of betrayal, she held fast to the greatest joy of her life, her newly adopted son, Louis, and shielded him from the storm with quiet dignity. Then came Gravity, which shattered box office records, and Bird Box, which became a global phenomenon. Sandra had become one of Hollywood's most powerful women, commanding $20 million paychecks and negotiating historic profit deals. But off-screen, her life remained grounded. In 2015, she found love again with photographer Brian Randall, who became a father figure to Louis and to her daughter Layla, adopted later that year. Together, they built a home filled with ordinary joys, school runs, birthday parties, late-night talks in the kitchen. Sandra, who once feared love might never find her again, had finally discovered her safe harbor. But life is often cruelest when it feels most complete. In 2020, Brian was diagnosed with ALS. Sandra quietly stepped away from Hollywood to care for him, transforming their home into a sanctuary. She became his constant companion, tending to him through sleepless nights, playing music, keeping laughter alive so her children would remember love, not loss. For 3 years she walked that road, until August 5, 2023, when Brian passed away at just 57. Sandra was there, holding his hand, their children by her side. It was a devastation no award or fame could soften, the shattering of the family she had fought so hard to build. As if fate had not tested her enough, just 9 days later, The Blind Side, the very film that earned her an Oscar, was swept into controversy as Michael Oher filed a lawsuit against the Tuohy family. Though Sandra had no connection to the case, cruel voices online called for her to return her Academy Award, adding public pain to her private grief. And still, she chose dignity over spectacle, silence over anger, focusing only on her children. Today, Sandra Bullock lives quietly, far from red carpets, centering her world around Louis and Layla. Her $250 million fortune, Malibu retreats, and Beverly Hills estates are not symbols of excess, but sanctuaries where she heals and protects her children. Her beauty remains luminous, her strength unshaken, her legacy undeniable. Sandra's story is no longer about Hollywood fame, but about what remains when the lights go out. A woman who has endured betrayal, illness, and unimaginable loss, and who still chooses love. Sandra Bullock reminds us that resilience is not about never falling. It is about rising every time life tries to break you. Her films will always shine. Her Oscar will always gleam. But her greatest achievement is the quiet, unshakable grace with which she has faced life's darkest storms. She is not just a star. She is proof that dignity can outlast devastation, and that love, even when scarred by loss, is always worth choosing.